Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Turner. I'm the Managing Director at RiskNZ, and welcome to this August lunchtime seminar. It's great always to see such a good turnout, and the support is always needed and always very welcome. I would like to thank and acknowledge the support of RiskNZ sponsors who make this possible, and that's how we can be here today. And that's CAMS, Protec, Aon, LexisNexis, SIO Global, Insurance Business New Zealand, F24, and of course, Xenic. All participants have been put on mute, but please feel free to type questions straight into the Q&A panel anytime during the session. We'll have a Q&A session towards the end of the presentation, and then we can ask for questions. So please ask anything, always happy to hear it, and we always get some interesting questions and answers. So now on to the exciting bit, today's topic. So the future of cybersecurity, a continuous assurance approach. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to the presenter, Terry Chapman, Managing Director and co-owner of Xenic. Terry kindly jumped in last minute to present today, so thank you, Terry. It's a real privilege. Xenic has been leading the information security industry since 2009, and they're very passionate about their risk-based approach to security that helps their customers achieve better business outcomes. So thank you very much, and over to you, Terry.
Awesome. Thank you for the intro, David. I appreciate it. Welcome all. Thank you for the invite to be presenting today. I'm not Michael Price, who is one of my team members who's just become a new dad. So I'm stepping in for Michael. Hopefully you'll get a great experience with my view on the future of cybersecurity. This is something that's really dear to our hearts, and it's something that we're really passionate about. So I hope you learned some good stuff today from what we're doing and our approach and why we've done it. And I'm really looking forward to the Q&A at the end of the session. Interested in your feedback, any comments you've got, if you've got your own ideas about the direction that we're headed. All right, so for those of you that haven't come across Xenic before, we're an information security business. We're one of the few specialized information security, or cybersecurity, if you like. That's a religious debate in itself that we can have another time. One of the few information security specialist businesses in New Zealand. This is all we do. So governance, risk, and assurance. We have a long credibility in New Zealand of working in the risk and assurance space, both with the New Zealand government and commercial businesses. We are among the first InfoSec providers in New Zealand to offer the GCDO risk and assurance process in an agile context. Many years ago, Xenic were the original authors of the government risk and assurance processes, as well as quite a few of the key documents that are used by government agencies over the course of the years. I'm also happy to let you know that we practice what we preach, and we're ISO certified ourselves, ISO 27001 certified ourselves. So in a nutshell, we think we've got some good pedigree to be sort of having this conversation about what's next for cybersecurity in New Zealand. All right, so the 1990s call, they want their risk assessment report back. This is kind of the catalyst of how we've arrived at this. That we've over the last few years, so we've been operating for about 13 years in the security space in New Zealand. These are some of the challenges. So over the next few slides, I'll go through why we thought that a change was needed, and some of the main pain points that we're seeing from both our government and our commercial providers. It's fair to say that there's been significant advances in almost every industry over the last 30 years, but the management of cybersecurity and information security risk in particular is still living in the 1990s. And so bear with me for a few minutes as I walk through that as to why I think that's the case. So the first one is the critical risk and assurance insights are trapped in dozens, hundreds, sometimes thousands for our very large customer documents. Security consulting delivery is kind of perpetuating a point in time, and so what I'm actually saying is that that the security industry, so myself and my colleagues and my competitors, are actually perpetuating this as a challenge in the way that we've historically delivered risk and assurance to our customers. What that typically looks like is we'll be engaged to do a kind of an end-to-end risk and assurance engagement. So there'll be a risk assessment there might be a risk management plan. Certainly there's going to be an audit at some stage when we sort of come back to check effectiveness of recommended controls to manage risk, and so there's a process that's gone through as part of a typical engagement in our space. But what we've ended up doing is we're engaged with our customer and we go, here's your risk assessment, here's your audit, and it's a static document, and so it has value at that moment. But if you can imagine the results of an audit, for instance, which I think a lot of the people on this call are playing in the risk and assurance space, what the value of of those audit findings are a day later, a week later, a month later, 6 months later. Certainly by the time you get to a 6-month attrition of those security artifacts, their value is pretty limited. And so that's kind of that's the key challenge that we came across. Let's move on and have a look at some of the other ones. This is something which I'm sure that all of you guys find. It's a challenge to see the big picture of organizational cybersecurity risk if you're not looking at the holistic view. And if we look at something like let's say some of our large government customers, they'll do certification and accreditation, which is the risk and assurance process in government. They might do that for each of their key systems, or hopefully they'll do that for each of their key systems. Those agencies might have 200 systems. And so you can start to see the magnitude of the problem if you have all these static risk assessments and risk management plans and audit documents all disconnected from one another. How you would actually aggregate that over time to actually manage the organizational risk of that organization. It gets really challenging in the way that we've historically delivered this stuff. So and we have noticed that, and we're probably guilty of this as anyone else, that the cybersecurity risk management is often focused on the process itself, and so we fling around all these industry-specific acronyms. SRA, PIA, PTA, SRMP, SSP, CVP, CVA, and the kind of the list goes on. Security control, risk matrix. These mean something to us as an organization and yourselves as risk professionals. But what the heck do they mean to the key people that need to do something with this information? I think as an industry, we've got a little bit too fixated on the mechanisms of managing risk rather than asking the simple question: are we providing the risk owner with enough information to make an informed risk-based decision? It's far extreme. This kind of process, sort of looking at the process as opposed to the output of the process, can become a tick box exercise, which is kind of the worst thing that you want to do for risk management. It's not a tick box exercise. That's a journey in helping the organization become secure. And so the last thing that I'll point out is that the cybersecurity investment is often spent on widgets. You guys would have seen that yourselves, and kind of it's almost a knee-jerk response to we must do something. There's bad actors out there. There's threats out there. There's vulnerabilities and hacking happening. We've got to do something. And so the typical response to that is we'll buy a widget. it's a firewall or it's a security training program, but without taking a fundamental risk-based approach to cybersecurity, organizations can, and I'd suggest are, wasting potentially millions of dollars implementing security controls that don't necessarily protect what's important to the organization. The reference on the screen with the paper clips is that's a saying that we have in Xenic. If you protect your diamonds and your paper clips the same way, you'll soon have more paper clips than diamonds. Okay, so that's kind of, it's painted a pretty bleak picture. I do understand, but this is what's driven Xenic as a business to go, actually there's a better way. And so what does the future of cybersecurity look like for our customers? In our view, this is what we want to see happen across the industry. And so this is what we're driving across all of our customers, and kind of the trying to lift this up to a conversation with our government customers and GCDO and Office of the GCISO, our commercial customers, to go, okay, there's a better way. How about we talk about these things? Okay, so the first thing, so what does cybersecurity look like in 5 years' time? So this is, as opposed to sort of chipping away at the norm or not really looking at actually what does ideal look like. We played it out. So we're in business. We've been in business for the last 13 years, as I said. When we look back in 5 years' time, and to say we've achieved what we wanted to achieve with moving New Zealand forward from a cybersecurity perspective, what is it that we wanted to achieve? So the first thing is that our risk stakeholders have an accurate risk information to make business decisions. Cybersecurity risk is managed holistically across the enterprise, not in silos. Cybersecurity maturity is measured through risk management. This is really important for us as a philosophy. There is a lot of compliance-based views out there, and that's actually driven by some of the standards. So if you look at, say, PCI, which is something that we help our customers with, PCI is very compliance-driven, but that's not to say that you can't make a risk-based approach and include the PCI compliance as part of your holistic strategy for how you're going to manage risk. Assurance is a continuous process. I'll talk a little bit about this shortly, but this is one of the bigger changes that we're extolling. Cybersecurity investment is traceable through to business risk reduction. And so if that widget that's being implemented as a security control can't actually have traceability back through to the business risk that it's managing, the organization is probably wasting its time and money and effort. And finally, the cybersecurity tools dynamically update risk posture. So that goes back to what I was saying before of having all this really useful risk management insight trapped in documents. All right, so just looking at a little bit about where we see our view of security versus our customers' view of security. When I say mind the gap, I actually think that there's a difference in perception of how security is treated by ourselves as risk professionals and by our customers, the people who we're serving, who are trying to facilitate and help them manage their risk. So on the business owner's side, or the risk owner's side, give me enough information in order to make an informed decision. And then speaking for ourselves as well, this is what we give them. All these jargons and acronyms and industry and the process, and what we're actually trying to achieve is kind of that security gold in the middle, and helping these business or service owners make an informed decision in what we're doing as an outcome of all these activities. So the key questions, and then I'll go on in a little bit. So shortly we're going to move to actually, this all sounds great in practice, but how are we going to get there? So we'll talk about that in a minute. So the key questions that I think that that us as professionals, as risk professionals, need to answer is what risks am I managing? What do I need to do about them, if anything? Because do nothing is actually an acceptable risk strategy, as you all know. Who will do what and when? So traceability of risk right through to action, which might be the implementation of a security control or security training or an incident response process, or pick your favorite control. How are we progressing? This is something which is currently done very manually. And anyone in this audience that is currently reporting on risk management, I would hazard a guess that you spend a chunk of your time in manually finding sources of information and collating those in order to be reported on. And then the final thing, and this is kind of the other side of the coin of risk management, is, as you guys know well, have we sufficiently balanced risk and opportunity? And so have we given that stakeholder enough idea of what risks they are managing in order to be able to take opportunities which they wouldn't normally be able to take if they weren't managing their risk? I kind of I look at that as sort of the analogy of a sports car, and so the brakes on the support, the brakes on a sports car are there to help the car go faster, which sounds a bit counterintuitive, but the driver can actually drive a lot faster knowing that they're able to stop and corner than what they would do if they didn't have those good brakes. And so that's kind of how we look at the balance of risk and opportunity. Okay, so that's all very well and good. Great. So how are we doing it? So that's lots of aspirations. We've identified quite a few challenges. We've identified what we want cybersecurity to look like in 5 years' time. Now what? How are we going to achieve that? So all of this, so what I've just covered with you guys is that's been weighing on our minds for the last few years, and over the last 2 years we've kind of percolated the idea of actually what do we want to do about that. Our board hired our consulting practice manager, who's Ahmed, who some of you will know from previous RiskNZ presentations. And it's one of his key jobs was actually come and help us solve this problem, Ahmed. We did an extensive search on, okay, well, we know that we need to tool up. So it's not about the tool, but a tool certainly does help. If you're going to dig a hole, then having a spade as a tool is a great way to dig the hole, but you still need to have the energy and know where you're going to dig and a power line underneath it. We knew that we needed to tool up to do this, and so we had a look at what was out there, and we ultimately decided that as part of our tooling up, that we chose Archer IRM, which I know that some of you are familiar. And for those going to the RiskNZ conference, you'll get to meet Sam over the next week or so. Sam's has actually presented with us before on this topic. Xenic is really excited to have partnered with Archer to do this, because they see the vision that we're trying to achieve. All right. Okay, so as I mentioned, it's not just about tooling. This is probably when we're talking to our customers and we say, okay, this is what we're doing. We really have to have the conversation of, okay, no, it's the tool is an enabler for this, and Archer is an excellent governance, risk, and compliance tool. I'm sure those who have used it will testify. But it's the combination of our consulting team, really great tooling, and also our knowledge built up over many years of actually how to deliver these services well. And so, and that's how we've presented this out to market. Is it's actually a service enabled by a tool, enabled by a great consulting team, and the IP that's gone into to getting where we are. Okay, so what this enables us to do is it gives our customers the ability to make informed decision making based on the risk inputs. Ahmed's given me a wee little video here, which gives you a little bit of a taste of kind of the direction that we've moved here, is the aggregation of risk information across multiple things in order to make good decision making as an output. Continuous assurance. Now, this is something which we strongly believe that the industry needs to move to over the coming 5 years. And let me talk you through that for a bit. I'll give you a couple of examples so you can sort of tie it together. I mentioned before the government certification and accreditation, the CNA, which I know a lot of you are probably quite familiar with. That's kind of it's a mystery black box until you get to the the certification report, which is kind of the final part of the whole CNA process of the CISO certifies it, and then the risk owner accredits it, that it can go live. Quite often, the first time that the risk owner will see what's going on for this brand new shiny system that they're implementing is when they get asked to sign this thing off, and there's a kind of almost an invisibility of process up until that point, and it could go either way. It could be awesome, great solution, great system, great processes, take your pick, or it could be an absolute train wreck. It's kind of the mystery surprise at the end of the process. The same happens for PCI compliance, and so PCI compliance is unlike other risk management where it is compliance focused. It's either on or off. You are either PCI compliant or you're not. If you've got the 400 controls, if it's a big rock, then you either meet all those 400 controls, or if you meet 399 controls, you haven't passed the PCI compliance. This is a key problem for most organizations, because they get to that point of doing the rock and go, oh, actually we had no idea that had that stuff needed to happen. Same with ISO 27001 certification. This one unfortunately didn't pass its internal audit. With the continuous assurance approach, what we're recommending and extolling to kind of industry and our customers is that this should happen as regular checkpoints. And so if I take PCI compliance is in that list up there, that is the security controls are remediated by the teams in the organization. That control, let's say a security policy, for instance, is then submitted through to the assessor that goes, yep, that's good. That passes compliance. And so now, assuming that security control doesn't need to be reassessed before the actual audit, then that part of the audit is actually now complete. And if you multiply that across multiple security controls, in that case, which is compliance focus, as I mentioned, then by the time you get to that ROC audit, you actually know what state things are in. It's not a big surprise at the end of the day. We think that all security needs to move to this over the coming period, and we're strongly moving towards this in government CNA. With CNA managed services, reusable enterprise controls, consistent risk libraries, a bunch of stuff. If you're interested in that, ping me a note and I'm happy to answer questions. Well, I could go into a lot of detail, but it's not really the level for this call. Needless to say, I've spent a bit of time on the slide. We think this is enabled by a really good tooling. This is one of the really important things that's going to be happening over the next 5 years. Specific to our use of Archer, integrating with other systems. For those people who are doing the manual reporting, sorry about that, I feel your pain. There is a lot of integrating needed to do, a lot of manual integration needed to do to actually get a sense of risk management and compliance. Even if you're managing, say, third parties, you might have 10 different third parties that all provide their own view into how they're performing from a security perspective. You as risk professionals still need to aggregate that view, and so having something which is aggregated and consistent and automated is a really good way of actually lifting the game and making sure that we're looking at a consolidated view of risk management. So holistic management of risks. I mentioned earlier in the call the kind of all this information trapped in systems. Now this is the way that security organizations are engaged is not actually helping this. So I can tell you, for instance, that most of our customers engage in Xenic services using capital expenditure. So it's project-based funding, which is great. So let's say it's a new system that's going live. There'll be a project budget associated with that system, and a slice of that will be for managing cybersecurity or information security. And then we get engaged, or another industry provider gets engaged. We come in. Our scope is very much limited to just that project because it's the project's budget, and so they want to know what they need to know to go live. And so we'll scope that down, possibly not paying much focus to enterprise controls because that's not the project scope. That's the enterprise problem to solve, and so this perpetuates a very siloed view of risk and assurance. And so that's just one example of a capex funded project for security, which is a system based. Multiply that by 100 systems, you can imagine what's going to happen. What you get is a very siloed approach to security, lots and lots of duplication of effort. So if we take the enterprise controls, which are the slice in there, so firewalling, logging, security training, security policies, incident response processes, all these things which need to sit at the base of being able to provide good organizational level security, all those things get done again and again and again and again. And if something's actually fixed, so looking on the sort of the brighter side of it, let's say that your incident response process was a little bit shonky. And that was identified in a risk assessment and recommended controls. You go away and you remediate that. You come up with a great process. You do tabletop exercises to fix that. You do lessons learned, and you've got procedures for staff to follow, and you come up with a really great incident response approach. Now that's the fact that security control has been remediated is not reflected anywhere else, and so there might be 100 systems which actually have that as a key control to manage risk, but it's really difficult to actually link that back of by implementing that control and investing that time and money. This is the impact that it's had on risk management across the whole organization, not just for that project that needed it at that particular moment. So this approach is kind of, you can see where I'm going is an aggregated risk and assurance across the whole enterprise, and so it takes a different type of engagement, and so Xenic is kind of we're pioneering some of this work in New Zealand, and the first thing that I noticed is that when we try to say, okay, well, let's focus on enterprise security controls, let's focus on reusable artifacts, reusable platforms, and then when the project comes along, they just have to do their tiny slice. And so the cost of doing risk insurance for those projects is actually becomes quite small over time. But in order to fund that, organizations need to use their operating budget. And everybody on this call will know that the operating budget for security is often very, very tight, and more focused on salary than kind of ongoing security and maturity. So actually organizations maturing the way that they're funding security is a key part of where we need to move over the coming 5 years. It's a big rock to move. I don't underestimate how challenging that will be for organizations, but we are working with a number of organizations at the moment that are actually finding a way, and they're starting to see some of the benefits in this. And then finally is the traceability of security spend, and this I think is kind of the payback on doing cybersecurity well, is that our organizations that we're working with are not wasting money on security controls that are not going to manage a business risk. We do see quite a lot of we go into a lot of organizations where we see they've had an audit done. Great, that's excellent. What was that based on? Oh, it was against NIST or against ISO or whatever. NZICM, choose your favorite framework, and then out came 100 different recommendations. And my question to these people is always, okay, well that's good, but how does that relate to your business context? I will remind you about this. So the slide with the paper clips. So if you're treating all of those security controls equally to manage your risk, which ones do you prioritize? Where do you spend your money? How do you know that you're not actually spending money on things that are not managing risk? And this is the whole risk-based approach to the security and the traceability of being able to go to manage this risk. We need to get to implement these controls. If we implement these controls well, this is how it's going to impact our compliance for a start, and also our ability to manage our risk. So to wrap that, what I'm saying is it's 2022. It's no longer the 1990s. It is a new world of cybersecurity threats, and it's time that we as an industry, collectively, yourselves and ourselves, modernize the way that we approach risk management. And with that, I will open the floor to some questions.
I just want to say, firstly, thanks very much, Terry. That was brilliant. And you always give a realistic view of risk, usable and very practical, without really looking at too many assumptions, which I really agree with. So I really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah, please type your questions in. It can be any question at all. It's a good time to do it now while it's fresh.
So is this approach new to anyone? So it's because I have talked to a lot of different organizations that are doing parts of this. And there's some organizations that are actually doing a really good job of doing a lot of these things at the moment, but doing it very manually. And so it's that their time and attention can only go so far, because their resources, normally their security personnel, can only get so much achieved.
Look, we'll just go a minute or two. Some people will type in their questions and it takes a little while. So just while we're waiting for that, I just want to mention that we have the summit next week. as Terry mentioned as well, be very exciting. It's worthwhile being there. So look, if you need to sign up, please do, and please don't miss out.
And go and say hi to Sam from Archer.
I'll definitely do that. We've had great conversations, and he talks about Xenic very highly. So yeah, we'll have another catch up when we get up there, and also talk about more risks. So that'll be really exciting. Hey, look, if there isn't any questions, and I understand people may need to get back to work and things like that, you can always welcome to send them through to me. We can always pass them on, or direct to Terry. That's okay, or to Kimberly at our admin. So while I'm talking, you can still put a question in, but I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you very much, Terry. Oh, here we've got a question here, so let's have a look at this. What role do you see insurance in this model, Terry?
We see insurance as actually, if I've got the link to the blog on there. I should probably defer to our consulting practice lead and one of our principal consultants that had a rather heated debate online, which made its way into a blog of whether cybersecurity insurance was a security control or not. I'd suggest go and have a look at that blog. I'm not going to steal their thunder, but great question.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well answered.
There's a bit of religious debate going on there. So.
That was from Ben Lynch, so we know him well. So good question.
Yeah, I figured.
Okay, any final ones? Remember, it could be anything. Good while you're here. Okay, hey, we might wrap it up there, Terry. And look, thank you very much. It's very interesting. I learn a lot, always do, when I come to your presentations. Thanks everyone for coming along. The webinar is recorded, and we'll have it sent out to you in the next couple of days, courtesy of Kimberly. If you're not a member of RiskNZ, please think about joining. There's a lot going on for memberships. And once again, think about the summit next week and all the other events that we're starting to come up with. So a huge thank you, Terry. Thanks very much for your time today. Thanks very much for everyone coming. And look, we'll see you all soon.
Cool. Thank you for having me, Dave.
Anytime.